Anish, very interesting game against Aleksander Indjic today. What happened? Can you tell us?
Yeah, it was a very interesting game. He played in a very original way. I think it was never completely ridiculous what he was doing, but it was very risky throughout. Many decisions were very risky, of course, particularly when he pushed d4. I mean, it has some strategic point, of course. Sort of he breaks the position into two parts, and then there's some dark square thing going on potentially. And if I push my pawn to h4 like I did in the game, then there is some risk that he sort of blasts it open at some point with maybe some f6 g5 or maybe some sack somewhere. And also this move knight f6 was very unexpected to me. I thought he should go a5, slow me down on the queen side. But to be honest, I was happy with what I was doing, for sure. I thought that this d takes e4 is a great concept. It completely secures my king side from any attack of his. So while I have maybe other options to play, they're all a bit risky. Like knight f6, I think knight f6 probably could be the best move. Like I was thinking maybe, but then there's a lot of risks that there is some attack simply. I was thinking some f5, f4, but also he mentioned just rook g8, knight f5, and just sack somewhere. It's also possible. So there were some sacrifices, but I think I was really thrilled with d. I thought this was brilliant. And then I started to doubt, like, because my bishop on g2 is so bad, I just started sort of, it was a very interesting position. I started to doubt it a bit. And then also I was really happy that I could take on d4 the pawn, because I was calculating some forcing line that I go, just queen c1, queen b4, take, I have queen g5, or rook b1 first, and both looked really good to me. But then I started to realize that some of my bishop is so bad that all the sharp lines are very unclear. After queen g5, there were a lot of issues that I had. I thought maybe he can play like queen c3 was interesting. Now the idea is that if I go rook c1, queen d4, e3, now he goes queen c5, and with pawn on e3, if I take queen g7, he goes king e7, queen g5, f6, and because the pawn is on e3, I have to go like queen f4, I think. But my queen on f4, it's completely stuck, like completely forever. And I didn't want to play with he can never attack it maybe, but I didn't want to play with that queen. Also, I realized he could do this immediately. He can go queen c5. He can let me take this g7 pawn, and in the same line after f6, I can come back with my queen. But what did I achieve? It's not clear because my bishop on g2 is a disaster. I can never go f4, or I could go f4, but that's not in the near future. And on the queen side, I'm down one pawn, so I was kind of started to doubt, like, how much better am I? Then I thought for a bit longer. I started doubting, like, where exactly am I better? Then I started doubting, am I actually better at all? And then I just thought, so I'm probably just not better or something. I just went through b1 and just made the draw, to be honest. I don't know, it was very unclear. Like, computer also gives some advantage of the queen g5, but I want to see this. Like, I'm not sure how clear that advantage is. Knight g6, by the way, was the worst case scenario. I thought also knight g6 he could go. Of course he could go knight g6. But then I'm a bit better. This is what I was actually initially expecting. So when I was calculating from afar, actually funny, like my first line was the first line of the engine, which I saw. Yeah. But then I started to think more. I started seeing things that are even beyond the computer. Yeah, but they're probably bad. But he was actually going to do this queen c5 business. Computer gives it like 0.8, yeah, this one. But I don't know, like I have to see. So 0.8, it's a strange evaluation. It's in between, like if it's over +1, okay, it's very bad. But if it's under +1, it's maybe not so bad. So it's in between. It will be either fine for black or horrible. We'll have to see on a good engine. I don't know. Just more, like the position was very complex because, okay, of course the numbers because I have some pawns, but my bishop on g2 is really bad. Yeah, it's watching the pawn on e4, and his knight on e5. It's not an outpost as such because I have a f4 somewhere, but not in the near future. And in any line where I go f4, even if I ever do it, the knight jumps to g4. So, like speaking more strategically, I think black has kind of a decent position, and I kind of realized it. And then when I played rook b1, I offered a draw because I was going to go like queen b4 and trade the queens and just play for a draw. And I was wasted a lot of time and didn't see any point to continue anymore.
So we are at the halfway stage of the tournament now, Anish, and co-leading with Indjic so far. Of course, the other games of the round are still going on. How are you playing? How are you feeling about your play so far here?
Yeah, my play, to be honest, it's a bit of the usual. Like I'm making mistakes that are typical of myself. The consequences of my style. So yeah, it's okay. Overall, I was lucky, to be honest, in many games. Of course, I got to win a few games. Like also yesterday was nice how it finished, but
Yeah.
at various points there was no need for my opponent to lose the game. Of course, at some point he had a okay end game, which was without risk for him.
Yeah, maybe this C4 break was not ideal by him, yes?
Yeah, I think he lost sense of danger. He was playing for advantage still, and actually he didn't have any advantage anymore. He should have been thinking more about being careful there, controlling the position. But he is an ambitious player, a very strong player as well, and he was just being very optimistic that C4. I also initially expected C4. I thought, okay, if we trade everything, probably I'm okay. But then I realized I can just take and go, like I just take and B4, which is in a middle game, of course, this should never work because usually the central pawns will crash through. But in the end game, it's a different story because the central pawns no longer, my king safety is no longer a factor. And then in the end game, the outside passes are much more dangerous very often. So yeah, it is some sort of like a blind spot that he had. I totally understood that. I mean, I initially also had that blind spot, but as soon as I saw takes before, I realized that okay, I'm probably just much better. And it was nice. I was of course lucky that this whole thing occurred, but okay, you can't win a game of chess without luck.
And also, I think a very interesting game against Tronov. Can you tell us a little bit about that game as well? Nice win, perhaps.
Yeah, the opening went wrong there, but he made one big strategic mistake at some point. He went h4, allowing g4, and actually he could just start queen d7. After the game we discussed a lot, but I didn't even remember this moment that actually yes, after taking on h3 he got queen d7, and next move h4, and I don't have g4, and I have to bother about this knight on h3, and then the whole thing is completely different. Position is quite completely fine for him. If anything, I would think he's on the good side. I don't know if I've equalized, to be honest, at this point. I do think that okay, I would be okay. I don't think I have to lose this position or something, but winning it would be much harder, for sure. But the way the game went, I got g4, and he made also one more mistake later, but it was very, very actually nice. In the end game, he has rook h5 instead of knight e7, which I saw. I spent a lot of time actually on this. Okay, I played the game very quickly, but I did spend time there on rook h5. And I actually saw a very good move, a very good try, a5, which I thought gives me maybe a winning advantage. Because I was calculating after a5, knight e7, of course. And then I think I dropped the rook back. And if b5, I have a gf intermezzo, but also I have knight a3 always. And then I hit his b5 pawn, the f6 pawn also is being hit. So I thought, okay, he's kind of collapsing. Because of course after rook h5 I can also go gf, rook f5, fg, or knight d6 check and then fg. That will just give me a pawn, but I think that is kind of okay for him because he has rook f2 and but it was really a5 that I was thinking is very smart, so I was really happy with that. And if a5, if he puts a king on the 7th, with king b7, I go gf, rook f5, rook g7 check, intermezzo. But computer showed a5, knight takes a5, which to me was a shock because I can take on a5, ba, rook c5, and to me it seemed like he's completely collapsing in this rook endgame. But actually computer just goes king b7, rook a5, and just rook c8 somewhere. Suddenly the c2 pawn is a massive target. And for some, like, to me it was like a total shock at first that black is completely fine. But maybe if you think about it longer, it starts to make sense. I don't expect that he would come up with a5, knight a5, because I think that's something really, really, really hard. I think he would have a blind spot for that as human. But I'm curious, like how would different players see it? Because to me, it was total shock that you can do that. Yeah. But he had this chance with rook h5 and a5, knight a5. But otherwise, it was a quite good game.
Yeah. And we noticed that many times you're analyzing with opponents a lot. I noticed that with Pranav also. Even after discussing about the game, we were also discussing about many other things, like about chess in general. Also, I think you guys discussed. So is this something you enjoy quite a lot, analyzing after your game?
Yeah, for sure. Mostly the game, of course, we're talking because I've especially in classical game, you think a lot.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of interesting thoughts, and you can always okay. Now the computers become so strong that it's even a little bit strange. The computers' opinions don't even matter so much anymore, in a sense, because they become so strong. They just give you the final result, of the game already.
Yeah.
For example, position like after rook h5 that he had is just computer just says it's just probably draw. If you leave him run for a while, he'll just say it's 0-0-0 probably because it's just draw. But of course, white had the massive advantage, and it's like a miracle that black is okay. To paraphrase another great player, but yeah, it's very interesting to discuss games. Also, I'm curious what my opponents thought as well because they're very different players. I don't know them very well. They're okay. Everybody's has his own thoughts and interesting ideas. So I'm trying to see maybe I can learn something from them, and mostly curious just about the game. To just discuss because you spend a lot of time, thinking about these things, and it's very interesting part of the game to discuss. The only thing is that sometimes people, when they lose, they feel so bad they don't have the mood to discuss. But my opponent so far has been very cautious, and and sometimes like top players, they have a thing where it's sort of no longer part of the culture. I always like to discuss games, to be honest. For me, even when I lose, I like to discuss a bit because I'm very curious what people thought. Because I can check with engine, but again, it's not the same. I'm curious what my opponent thought. I learned a lot from these discussions. Also, often, they just after the game you just exchange few words. It takes 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's still meaningful, for sure. I remember when I was doing it with Kramnik or Carlsen. I find it very interesting. I find it a pity. I think a lot of things changed with Magnus Carlsen. He's changed a lot of the culture. He's trying to sort of. He's very close. He's trying to not withhold his great secrets, and even small things like, for example, before World Championship matches, people were sharing who their seconds are. And he just at some point did do this.
Yeah.
And various things, also like making short draws with white. He also did because he's such an impactful player, of course, like one of the greatest players of all time. He's changed a few things in the culture. To more to fit the way he sees chess, it being very competitive, also being very rational about things. Like if it's the best to make the short draw with white in the last round, you should do that. So how he did with Karakin in the match. Or if it's better for you not to discuss the game with the opponent because the opponent will learn something from you, then maybe don't. So he was started doing all these things which are like objectively smart. So the culture changed, and that's part of that. I think part of the reason why we stopped discussing the games afterwards as well. It's not so much the engine, because the engine, of course, again, it's a different thing. Like, of course, I'm curious to check with engine, but it'll give me a very different perspective on.
Yeah.
On
it's
the
like the
position.
objective perspective, sort of.
Yeah, sort of, and it become now so objective that okay, now again, so this is 0-6, but 0-6, it's because he's on low depth. Nowadays they're so strong. If you let him run very long, it's going to show either probably zeros or it's lost.
Yeah.
And okay, probably it will drop, to at some point to zeros if you leave him, let's say, for 5 hours. Yeah. And what does it tell you? And what? Congratulations. I mean, the sequence of the moves that leads to the draw. It's so difficult that both of you will not find more than half of them. Yeah. So, and what does it give you? Like this information is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with reality. Who was better? Like, okay, white was better because but was white better? I don't know. Like, we have to see it. We have to see uncover the sequence of moves. Yeah. Which moves are difficult. Try to understand that. But yeah, then again, it's not really the same as looking at it, because you have a game, you have your clock, you have situation. Your opponents, it's a different story.
Thank you so much, Anish, for sharing your valuable time, and I wish you all the best for the last 4 rounds.
Thank you.